All right, you may or may not have heard of object-oriented programming. Sometimes it's referred to as OOP. Object-oriented programming, as defined by realpython.com, is a programming paradigm which provides a means of structuring programs so that properties and behaviors are bundled into individual objects. Now, that might seem like a fairly complicated way to describe object-oriented programming, but let's just break it down. So a programming paradigm, this is a methodology that someone might utilize to program. So it's not the only way to program, it's a way to structure a program. So we're structuring a program that revolves around this idea of something called a property and a behavior. And those have to do with an object. So an object can have a property and an object can have a behavior. This object is the object-oriented programming paradigm. There are other programming paradigms, and if you're doing entry-level software development, a lot of times you're starting at this procedural. So procedural is we're just kind of working line by line and doing things and making modifications. The majority of code uses object-oriented. It's probably the most common is object-oriented, and it's not language specific. So you might use object-oriented programming with Python, Java, C++, any of those languages could utilize object-oriented programming. All right, so I'm just going to get rid of this, and I'm going to bring in this object right here. So what this object is I got this, I can't draw cars, so I got this from freepik.com, and I'll put a link in the bottom in the description to credit the author, the person that originally created this. But they've got some pretty cool vector art that you can download for free as long as you attribute the author. And I only slightly modified this. I wasn't really sure if that was against the rules or not. I just turned this gray because to kind of decide or help you to understand the principles. So when we're talking about a vehicle is an object, right? This is a transportation device. This vehicle has two things. It has attributes. Let me actually just bring in this chart. All right. So this vehicle has attributes. Okay, so this is a way that attribute is a way that we can describe the object, right? So one way to describe this object is I could say, hey, its color is gray. Or I might say it is a 2015 vehicle. That's when it was manufactured. Other types of things, if I had a person object, I would think about the person might have a name. A person might have a gender. A person might have an age, and so on. So these are things that are describing, they're describing the object itself. So that was the first part of the way that we're structuring programming to revolve around an object, and an object is described by attributes. So an attribute is anything that is describing the object. The second thing that's critical when we're talking about object-oriented program is the behavior of the object. What things can the object do, or what things can be done to the object? So it's some type of action that we're taking with the object. So let's say that we had a person object. We know what the person's name is. We know what the person's age is if we have those attributes. But that person can do things, right? We could have that person run. We could have that person walk. We could have that person jump. So you think of video games, right? The object is the character, and the character then can do things. For a car has a certain number of passengers, and a car, you could open the door, close the door, you could get in the car, you could drive the car, you can do things to the object. You could paint, you could actually change an attribute, so you could paint this car. Lots of things that could happen to this car. So let's go ahead and list just a few of this. If we were thinking of this car, the attributes of this specific car, let's list some of those initial attributes. All right, we'll just size that up a little bit. All right, so our object that we're dealing with right here, this object is called a car, right? So let me merge those, and that might make it a little more sense. Maybe it'll let me merge. It's looking like it does not have the capability of merging inside OneNote. Not a big deal. All right, so we have our vehicle, right? This is the actual object, and our vehicle has two things about it. It has this attribute, and it also has a behavior. Got it. All right. So let's list some of the things or some of the attributes of the vehicle. So one thing, a vehicle has a unique identifier. It's called the vehicle identification number, or VIN number. That's a unique way to be able to identify that vehicle. So that's pretty handy. That's like if I had a person object, I would be able to have their social security number, right? It's unique to the person. All right, so what else do we have for a vehicle? So a vehicle has a color. A vehicle has a model year. So this is when the vehicle was made. A vehicle also has a type, right? It could be a car, it could be a truck, it could be lots of different things. Let's do maybe number of doors. Okay, and so there's lots of more things to be able to describe this vehicle, but for now, let's just look at those few items that are right there. All right, so what are some of the behaviors that we can do to this car? Well, we could paint car, right? So if we painted car, we would make a modification to the color attribute. So we could change the color attribute. That'd be kind of interesting. We could get age of car. Right, if we wanted to see how old the car is, we would be looking at the model year attribute. It's not going to be big enough, is it? Let's just, oh, we're getting a compact car over here. All right, let's do it this way. OneNote's really fighting me on this. All right, let's do some rearranging. There we go. All right, we're getting somewhere. All right, I know that's frustrating to watch someone make all those adjustments on a while you're watching a video. So, sorry, one last thing, delete column. Okay. All right, so we have model year right there. We could change the model year. What if we could add a passenger to the car, right? Or add a driver to the car, right? This is a person. If I wanted to put a person in the car, let's just call it person. So then I would be affecting, oh, we don't have a thing that, so let's say we have an attribute that says number of passengers. Let's do number of total passengers. Whoops, missing an N there. All right, so this is this number is how many people can fit in this car. So, you know, a lot of vehicles are 5 people can fit in the car. So number of total passengers. And then we could also have then an attribute called current passengers. Right, and if there's nobody in there, current passengers would be set to 0. So add a person would increment current passengers. Okay. That car is just way too big, isn't it? Don't fight me. All right, I'll just move it out of that box. All right, that'll stay there. That'll be a good spot for it. Sorry, I've got some tendencies. Okay, So here we are. We've got a way to be able to describe our vehicle, and we have a behavior that the vehicle can take on. All right, so the next thing that we want to talk about is a class. So let me just come down to the screen down here. All right, so when we're talking about a class, a class is a blueprint of an object. Okay, so a blueprint of an object. So let's think of our example here, right? So we have a vehicle class, and the vehicle class, it has certain things to it, right? So this is the object is the vehicle. The vehicle class allows us to create a blueprint of the object. And some of the things that we already knew, right? Up here we knew that we had these items. These were the things that described the object. So inside the class, we would be able to add an attribute of all of the items that are found in that class. Really big V. Nailed it. First try. Okay, so here we go. These are the attributes of the class, and then of the vehicle class, and then we have the behaviors, right? So behavior, and the behaviors were these items right here. Okay, so now we have our behaviors in place and our attributes up here. So the behaviors are the things that we can do to the vehicle. Okay, the real key here is that a class is only a blueprint. Okay, a class is only a blueprint. It's a description of what a car could be. It is not the car. Okay, so if we grab our feisty little car right here, drag it down, right? Is this a car? Well, no, it's a drawing of a car, right? This isn't an actual car. So this object is showing what a car could be. Now, a person could take this blueprint and actually build this car, right? They could build the car and it could have all of these attributes that are described in this image. So the class is not the object, but it is a blueprint of the object. Well, why do I care? Why wouldn't I just create the object, assign it these variables or descriptions, attributes to describe it? Why wouldn't I just do it that way? Well, you could actually, right? I could create an individual object and have that object have a whole bunch of attributes, and you know, I'd be there ready to go. Well, the reason you don't, the reason not to do that is we could actually use this vehicle object to describe all of these. And I got this on the same site, and I'll hyperlink the source for it. But here we have vehicles. Here's my little gray car that's now green. Look at this vehicle here, and this vehicle here, and this vehicle here. For the most part, they're the same type of vehicle, but this one's painted green, this one's painted orange, this one's painted blue. So taking that blueprint that we initially had, okay, so taking that blueprint that we initially had, we're able to build this car right here and this car right here. Think of these as real objects. These are of the class vehicle, but they are an individual object. So this one color is, the attribute color is orange. This one, the attribute color is blue. This one, the attribute color is green. Well, if we keep this pretty generic, like if we have a type right here, we could actually create this truck, right? Because this truck has a VIN number, it has a color, it has a model year, it has the number of doors, it has the number of total passengers, it has all those things, right? The type is different though. This type of vehicle is a truck. This type of vehicle is a van, a truck, an SUV. Okay, so, but we can use this class to define all of these types of vehicles. And then we'll show later how we can then use that class to maybe even make a different class that inherits characteristics from the parent class. All right, and then one final thing, kind of the same idea. Really, if we talk about transportation devices, okay, so a vehicle, this could be considered a vehicle, right? It has the wheels, it takes people places, it helps them to transport. Now, we understand a vehicle is a car. We think of, hey, that's a car or truck. But all of these could be represented as vehicles. So you could have a higher level class of, say, transportation device. And then below that, in child classes, you could have, you know, a horse pulling a wagon, and some of these older vehicles and so on. So a lot of advantages to setting up a program using object-oriented programming. And now we'll get into the details of how you would set this up in Python, and we'll do a vehicle class and take a look at that. All right, so in the announcement, object-oriented programming, you'll find a link. Just go ahead and click on that link, and you're going to accept the assignment. So here it's going to create this object-oriented programming assignment for me. All right, if everything goes well, you should see things start happening right there. All right, so this is where my assignment URL is. I'm just going to click on that. And now I can download the starter code. So I'm going to open this up in desktop and open GitHub repository. So this is what it looks like in my desktop. Once again, you want to remember to, this is the URL for your repository, and this is the actual path that you're going to. So this is on my own machine. This is where it's going to put it. I like to put it in dev because then it's a lot easier to get to. I'm going to hit the clone button. You can put it wherever you want though. All right, so now I should be able to open this up in Visual Studio Code. All right, so in Visual Studio Code, we want to take a look at our code right here. I've got a README file in here, and this actually contains in Markdown the stuff that we've kind of already talked about. And so if you wanted to see a better version of this, you could click on this button right here, and it would show you kind of what that looks like. It looks a lot better on GitHub. This version isn't ideal. All right, so we want to talk about a class, and we want to have some attributes associated with this class. All right, so the first thing, I'm just going to jump right into the vehicle one, and then we'll go back and do a student class and kind of do it as a step-by-step process. All right, so we want to create a new file, and I'm going to call that file vehicle. Now, the convention in most languages is to capitalize the class. So this is the vehicle class, so I'll capitalize the name. So vehicle.py, this will pull up a new blank Python script, and make sure that you've got this Python snake. That indicates that you're in the vehicle class. So I'm going to make my screen a little bigger. I'm going to close this menu. Remember, these are just here at the side. I can close that. So just going to close that, and now I'm ready to start coding. Let's actually go just a little bit bigger. So control plus equals control. There we go. All right, so we got a good view right here. Move this up just a tiny bit to make sure it's looking good in the right there. I like it. Okay, so we have our code right here, and we're going to start talking about the vehicle class. So in Python, we're going to use the keyword class, and we'll type in vehicle right there. So class vehicle. And the first thing that I want to do in the vehicle class is to define some attributes. Okay, so that's just a comment. So an attribute, there are two types of attributes. So we can have a class level attribute and an object attribute. Okay. This will often be referred to as an instance attribute. Spelling's not the best right now. So an instance attribute. And I'm going to get rid of this squiggly line. I'm just going to come down here and write pass. And that'll fix that. We'll talk about this. Just skips over the code. What it's doing is trying to fix the code and say, hey, you don't have anything defined in a class. Well, I've just defined it right there. Okay, so a class level attribute and an object level attribute. So this class level attribute, this is an attribute that is all objects have this attribute, or at least start with this attribute. So an example of this in our attribute list, right, we said that a vehicle could have number of passengers, right? So this is the number of passengers that are currently in the vehicle. Well, when we create a vehicle, we create it to have, right, it should start out with 0. If every vehicle is going to be the same, then I would give it an attribute of 0. And the only reason I would give it that is if I had a reason to change an object down the road, if I wanted to do something like, say, a driver gets in the vehicle, but I wanted all of them to start with 0, I could then make a modification to that. So this is a class level attribute. Okay, so object level attribute, remember we had a list there, and in the object level attribute we had things that were describing color, VIN, and so on, right? So we have those things that are describing the specific object, the instance of the object. You'll sometimes hear it referred to as instantiating an object. Okay, we're creating an instance. So think back to that blueprint. I'm looking at the blueprint and I'm saying I will now make this object. Okay, and it'll have the following attributes. All right, so in Python, the first thing that you do is you're going to be creating, in other languages, this is often called the constructor. This allows you to assign the attributes when you create the object. So in this case, we're going to give an attribute, we're going to make attributes possible for the class. Okay, so we're not actually assigning attributes to an instance of the object. All we're simply doing here is saying these are the types of attributes that we would have in a Python script. So let me go back just to make sure that you caught what happened there. So I've started writing, so it's 2 underscores and then INIT, and you can see it pulls it up right there, right? And I'm actually using code completion. So when I hit the tab key, it fills that in for me. And that's just a nice part about using an IDE. So this initializer, right, other languages call it a constructor, allows me to assign specific attributes to the class. For now, we're just going to get rid of that. The first thing that I need to pass to an vehicle object is itself. Okay, so I want you to think of this as when the green car is created, there is an instance of that object. Self is the green car. So the entire object is described by self. Okay, when I create a blue car, the blue car object, its self is the blue car, right? It's describing the entire object. So I have self describing the green, it's the green car, or self describing the blue car. Okay, so this is the entire object. Some languages, they might use the keyword this, describing this object specifically. This will allow me to change or make modifications to the object, and we'll see this in action. All right, so first thing then we're going to do is we're going to give it our first attribute. So you always have to include self, and then now I want to include a VIN number. Let's also then do color, and we'll probably stop right there. Although we had more attributes, we just want to kind of run through this as an example. Okay, so I've assigned, or I've made possible, a person can enter in, and parameters is another, you'll hear attributes and parameters kind of used in conjunction. But I need to now assign those values here. So I'm going to use the keyword self. So I'm talking about this specific object that I'm creating, and I'm going to say this object's VIN number is equal to VIN. Okay, and then I'm going to give it a comma, and we'll come back and talk about what's really happening right here. I'm sorry, not a comma. Then I'm going to say self dot color equals color. Okay, and I'm going to delete that pass so that goes away. All right, I was a programmer for some time before I, caught on really what was happening here. So the reason this is a little confusing is the convention that is used. So this variable right here, VIN, and this variable right here, VIN, I'm going to delete this so it doesn't seem confusing, but this VIN is not this. Okay, so let's say that I typed the last part of this out and I said VIN number. Okay, this would then have to be VIN number. Okay, VIN number. So the assignment, what I'm assigning to the value of the attribute, is the parameter that I'm passing in. Okay, this will make sense more when we create the inactional object. So right here I have a VIN number variable, and I'm saying that VIN number variable that I'm passing in when I create the object, assign it to this variable called VIN. Now, under normal convention, everyone names those two the same thing. Okay, the problem is you can't get self attributes VIN unless you assign it the parameter that you're passing in. Okay, so I thought that was kind of confusing when I was first doing programming, but it's important to recognize that this is the same. This is not the same as this, right? This VIN is talking about self's VIN, not this argument that I'm passing in. Okay, hopefully that cleared it up and didn't make it more confusing. All right, so we can actually come down here. So we're outside of the class now, and I can create a class. Okay, so this class, excuse me, let me walk that back. Now I can create an instance of the vehicle class. So I'm creating an actual object of the vehicle class. All right, so let's say that we wanted to create a car. So we want to create, let me pull this one back out and put this one back in. So we have our blueprint, right? This is our blueprint. And it tells us the things about the car. And I want to create this car right here. Okay, so now I'm creating an object, and I'm going to utilize the blueprint in order to create that. I've got to do the things that the blueprint tells me about the car. All right, so we go back here. We're going to say, and we'll just call it, this is a variable that I'm just creating myself, and I'm going to call it green car. Okay, so this is a variable I'm creating. This variable is going to become the instance of the object from the vehicle class. So green car right here, and then I'm going to use the class's name, vehicle. Okay, so this is going to assign this to a vehicle class, or create a vehicle object. So the first thing that you should notice is this IntelliSense actually brought this information up, right? So it tells me it needs a VIN number attribute and a color number attribute. That's these two things right here, right? This is automatically assigned. I don't have to pass itself. That's automatically assigned. Okay, so I can come in here now and say, sorry, I want to put an actual VIN number. So let's just say this is 123 VIN number, right? And this is a green car. All right, so what this is doing is now creating an object, and that object is a vehicle object. The instance of the object is green car. I can then do the same thing. Let's say now that I've created a green car, I want to create this blue car. These are kind of the same, but this one's a different color. This is a different car. Even if I was to create an additional green car of the same color, that would not necessarily mean they're the same car, right? I could have two green objects or two green cars. Both of them are based on the blueprints that are defined by the class. So I go back here and I say blue car, and I could set blue car equal up to vehicle, and then 456 is its VIN number, and its color is blue. Okay, I'll go ahead and save that. And if you don't have this run file, Python file in terminal right there, you could right click and you should have that same thing. So run Python file in terminal, oh, it's because we're not doing anything. Getting all these errors, and it doesn't really even mean anything. All right, so what we have to do is we have to do something to the console, right? So let's just, first of all, print green car. And this isn't actually going to print anything that's of any value to us. If I do Control Shift down, no, Control Alt down, no, Shift Alt down. Man, I'm really struggling. Okay, here we go. See, I could just edit this out, but it's better to see, for you to see that everyone struggles, right? Shift Alt down. Man, I really struggled there. All right, and we'll change this to blue car. So Shift Alt down gets you that. And here we have green car and blue car, and it's just going to print out the object itself. So let's go ahead and save that again, run it in the terminal, and this is the information that we get. So we're actually printing out two things. We're printing out an object, and that object is stored in memory at this location. Notice that even though it's still a vehicle object, the blue car is stored in a different location in memory because they're not the same car, even though both of them were created using the vehicle class. To maybe see that a little bit better is what we could do instead is we could print out an attribute of the green car. Okay, so we could say here that we want to print out the color attribute. Okay, so we want the color attribute of the green car, and we want the color attribute of the blue car. And just so we're clear on which car we're talking about, we could just say here green car color is, remember you can just concatenate this on here like that, and we'll copy that and say blue car color is, and then we have blue car dot color. Whoops, I got to concatenate that. All right, so I go ahead and save that, and then I run it, and here we have green car color is green and blue car color is blue. So that might not have seemed significant, but it is. It's a big deal. What we've done now is we've created an object and we've assigned that object attributes, and now we can do things to that object. The next thing that I want to show you is the behaviors of the object. So when I want to create a behavior for an object, all I need to do is come here and I'm going to create a function. So I'm going to say def, and I want to paint car, right? I want to paint the car. The first thing that I need to pass to it is always self, and then let's do new color, right? I want to pass it a new color. Okay, so this is a behavior. We call it a function, right? A function against the class. You might also hear it referred to as a method. So method and functions are loosely used together to describe basically the same thing. All right, so when we paint the car, what we need to do is we need to make a change. So we want to change the color attribute for the car. We want to change that to be equal to the new color, right? And the new color I'm getting because I'm passing that information in. All right, so this allows me to then do something to the actual object. So right here, let's let's change the color of the car. So let's say green car. And then we're going to use the dot operator. So dot, and then you'll see that I right here I have that behavior, that method, that function, paint car. So paint car, and then I'm going to do a parentheses, and notice that the thing that I need to pass it is this new color. So here's my new color, and I need to pass it new color. So here I say new, or sorry, I'm going to say the actual color, and let's paint the car red. Okay, and then we're going to copy this, and let's then paste it below. And so we'll see this is the color of the original car, and this is the color after we painted the car. So we performed this behavior on the car. So sorry, my window's not all the way down. All right, so right here we have a green car. The green car is green, blue car is blue, and then we paint the green car red, and now the green car attribute has been changed to red. Okay, so that was a big deal. Because we've defined, and we hopefully have a better understanding of what an object is. So an object is not a class. An object is an instance of a class. So green car is an instance of the vehicle class. Blue car is an instance of a vehicle class. Okay, so this class is just the blueprint. It tells me what things a car should have. When I create an actual car, a green car, I'm taking the things that a car should have, and I'm assigning it values. This color is green, the VIN number is this, and so on. So I'm working at those two separate objects. These are instances of the vehicle class. Okay, so hopefully that was helpful in kind of giving you a real base level understanding of object-oriented programming. It is very important that you grasp some of these initial concepts. And once again, it's a paradigm, right? This is a programming paradigm. This is a methodology of structuring your program. Most of the time, even though it's object-oriented programming, you will have procedural parts of your code, right? You can almost create any physical thing in our world could be an object, a student, a park. All of those things can become an instance, right? They can create an actual physical object. But there's sometimes that I need to be able to do things that are outside of that realm. And so mixing them together, there's nothing wrong with that at all. It's just when anytime that you're creating more than one of a thing, you definitely want to consider creating a class and using the object-oriented paradigm. So hopefully that was helpful. I'm going to create another video. It's going to go in a little bit more depth, and it's simply just one that you know, if you want to get a little, if this is starting to kind of make sense, or maybe you have more questions, I would watch it, and it'll go through and we'll create we'll show a process of changing a procedural program into kind of more of an object-oriented programming, kind of the benefits of it. But it'll be a separate video that you can watch if you want to.